Have you ever had something that you weren't going to do, but then you just thought, opportunity is too good to pass up? I wasn't going to do an A-B comparison video of these two. I thought that the review of the new batch is enough, but because I'm keeping track of these year by year, I really couldn't give up the chance to do a little bit of an A-B while I had the chance. So I have released my review of batch 15 about a year ago now, I guess, and of recently this week released my review of the brand new batch, batch number 16. And spoiler or TLDR, I think they're both incredibly good whiskies. They're both really, really good, and they're both worth buying. But what's the difference? So I've actually pre-prepared a dram of each, and I've compared these at full strength and at various strengths, going down to probably about 45. I didn't really go any lower than that because I tend not to do that, because I really find diminishing returns when I take a whiskey below about 45. I very, very rarely see anything positive come out of the experience when I go that low. But what I've done here, I've worked out the required amount of water to take these both down to about 50, which is a really good drinking strength in my opinion. And that should allow me to see the differences between these two and really see what differences there are and in what ways they're different. Obviously I had to calculate the amount of water required differently for these ones, because last year's batch number 15 was 56.5 and this current batch is 58.5, so exactly 2% stronger. So here we go. I'm going to start off. I don't know how I'm going to do this to make it clear what I'm actually trying. I always work with like the lower numbers to my left. I imagine a lot of people do that, which is kind of how I've got them laid out here. So if I put that there, you can see those, can't you? Right. Do not get them mixed up. So batch number 15 is the one that I'm holding now on the nose. So I've had this with some water and a lid on it for about an hour. So on the nose, quite sweet, sweeter than I'm getting from the new batch 16. Smoky and sweet, a little bit of like a sweet barbecue, reminiscent of sweet barbecue sauce, because you've got that really nice sweet caramel oak and a nice ashy wood smoke. Smoky, ashy caramel, but also with a nice underlying bright citrus and a nice healthy dollop of the trademark Laphroaig disinfectant hospital floor cleaner aroma. Let's cover that up again. That was batch 15. Let's go to the batch 16, this year's current release. Also sweet, but nowhere near as sweet. It's much more aggressive. So lots of salt, brininess, salted caramel. Also quite woody. Kind of like a parquet floor in a hospital. Very salty, bracing sea air, much less sweet than the batch 15 and much more aggressive and edgier. Also perhaps a little bit less mature. I think that the batch 16, it definitely seems to me like it's had less active casks, although it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does seem, it's not immature, but it seems a little bit less mature than batch 15. So let's see how they taste. I'm going to go back to batch 15 and have a sip of that. Batch 15. Perhaps a small amount of Scotch mist there, but really not a lot. But then it's still about 50%. I've not diluted it that much. So flavours on the palate of batch 15. Again, smoky, very smoky oak, and lots of caramel again. Caramel oak, chewy caramel oak, and quite a farmy quality as well on the batch 15. It's like cow sheds. Beautiful whiskey. To be honest, when I buy a bottle of Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength, and I'm not bragging here because that would be stupid, but I drink most of it at full strength because it's just, you just allow yourself, your palate, to be overwhelmed by those beautiful flavours. And on this one, it's really got that farminess, the cow sheds, and like aromas of an actual peat fire, and just straight peatiness. Incredible balance. I think that the batch 15 is probably the best all-rounder out of all the recent batches. I think there's really very little to criticise about batch 15. Fantastic whiskey. So let's go on to the batch 16, this year's batch. Maybe a little bit more Scotch mist, but really similar. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more Scotch mist in batch 16. Interesting. On the palate though, much more aggressive, much more assertive, and in particular, much more aggressive on the oakiness on the palate of the batch 16. Dry oak and dry salty peat. Salted licorice I'm getting a lot, so kind of like wood spice, but I think a possibly unexpected benefit from that slightly more aggressive dry oak is that you get a little bit more body. I think that dense oak really works well to make this a really nice grippy, dense and full-bodied whiskey. That salty oak is definitely more prominent on the batch 16 than it is on the 15. And as I said before, with possibly having a little bit more immaturity on the nose of the batch 16 compared to the 15, I think that the flavours on the palate of the batch 16 is possibly that little bit harsher than the batch 15, but still a remarkably good whiskey. Really is the epitome of Islay whiskey. This is fantastic stuff. Let's have one last sip and look at the finish. So going back to the batch 15. Sweet and salty and malty, sweet peat, caramel, beautiful, beautiful balance, beautiful whiskey. So batch 16. Much drier, astringent, salty oak. It's got a little bit of a Talisker quality. And I don't mean that it doesn't taste like Laphroaig. Both of these are absolutely unmistakably Laphroaig. But I think that the batch 16, it's got that maritime quality. It's dry and salty and astringent and a little bit spicy and a little bit jagged and quite rugged in the way that a lot of good Talisker whiskey is. Between these two, in my humble opinion, and it's just my opinion because everyone likes different things, but I really, really, really like the batch 15. I think that it's the perfect modern Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength for me. It sums up everything that I think of when I think of Laphroaig 10 Cask Strength. It's just hits all the right notes in the perfect order and the perfect balance of all the individual parts. Whereas the 16, the new batch, it's, I think, equally as good I think it's on par with the batch 15, but the batch 15 just talks to me a little bit more. It just aligns with my preferences a little bit more, I think, whereas the batch 16 gives you an extra couple of extra percent ABV, which is not meaningless. That matters. It gives you that extra intensity, and if you're diluting this to, say, 50% or 46% to drink, then that gives you a little bit of extra mileage. And with the batch 16 you also get that extra saltiness, and it's a bit more aggressive. It's a bit more of a challenging style, and it's that slight little bit more ballsier than the batch 15. Although I do think that by delving into those hard, smoky, salty, oaky notes, it does lose a little bit of the depth that you have on the batch 15. Whereas the batch 15 is that slight little bit more rounded, and that malty intensity gives it a little bit more of a slightly more easygoing character, and I think quite a lot more balance than the 16. I do think that out of these two, I prefer the batch 15, but it's very, very close. I think that both of these are really great batches. You can't go wrong. I think that they're both a clear step up from batch 13 and 14. If you do need help deciding between these two, I'd say go for whichever one is cheapest. If they're the same price, then I'd say go for the 16 if you miss those days of Laphroaig from about a decade ago, where it was that bit more dry and slightly bitter profile. Otherwise, I really think that batch 15 is the perfect Laphroaig. So I look forward to your thoughts on this one if you've had both of these. But really, I think when you're talking about these whiskies, if you've had either of these or if you've bought either of these, everyone's a winner. But especially batch 15. Phenomenal. Cheers.